Greetings, YouTube. There's an old joke I heard that when someone is diagnosed with autism, the holistic community that they have in their sphere, their family, their friends, what have you, will immediately explain to them why they aren't autistic and why all the behaviors that they've expressed over the years, which are characteristic of autistic people, can be explained away for any number of reasons. But when someone tells their autistic friends that they have been diagnosed with autism, their autistic friends always go, "Yeah, we know." So at 58, I had myself assessed by a psychologist, did a 4-hour battery of tests, answered a bunch of questionnaires on top of that. My wife was asked to answer a questionnaire, which she really didn't enjoy. She didn't enjoy essentially feeling like she was informing on me, even though I had requested that she do this. And it was, overall of benefit to me in the long run. She still felt very, very strange about it. And I can fully understand that. It's a fairly weird thing to have somebody to ask. Hey, here's a bunch of questions about the most intimate human being you're in a relationship with. We'd like you to reveal their deepest secrets to someone that is essentially a stranger. Because while I had a session with this woman, her name was Sandra. My wife had never met her. Probably never will. So after having done the assessment and taking all the questionnaires and such, the psychologist in question, Sandra, did come to the conclusion that I am in fact on the autistic spectrum, which does explain a heck of a lot of things. She also came to the conclusion that I probably don't have ADHD. She says that the type of characteristics that a person who with ADHD has when it comes to attention problems is frontal lobe issues, and she says that my frontal lobe is functioning the way it's supposed to, or relatively close. And she feels that my attention problems, which do exist, she's not discounting them, are sensory related, so they're in a different part of the brain. I don't know what they call those things, and at the moment I don't care. She also gave me the more accurate diagnosis of telling me that rather than just saying that I suffer from anxiety, which is a very broad and nebulous term, I specifically suffer from the general anxiety disorder, which is at least got a name and at least has something that I can grab onto. You know what I mean? I can start doing more reading about the specifics of that disorder as opposed to just the very generic or disorder of anxiety. Why do I want to be known as autistic? Why did I go to this effort at 58 years old? Well, when I was 57 and diagnosed with ADHD, which again may not be accurate, it answered a lot of the questions about why I do the things I do, but it didn't answer all the questions of why I do the things I do. And I began to realize that, okay, if I put these things, they fit into the ADHD bucket, or at least the attention issue bucket, which is at the moment, I guess, what I'm calling that. But a bunch of other stuff doesn't fit into that attention problem bucket. But if I began to look at them from the lens of autism, it made a lot of sense. And I began to consume more media concerning autism, listening to people who have autism, their life experiences, what they struggle with, and finding out that there are distinct, very similar patterns that folks who have autism have to deal with, even though it may express differently from individual to individual and in their degree of specificity. But there are some general characteristics that many autistic people experience, and I experience them too. And I really want to, there's a specific person, her name is Rebecca, that I need to contact because I had found her through Instagram, and I now follow her on YouTube as well for her longer form videos, because listening to her, because she is an autistic advocate, an advocate for those who have mental illness in general, because she herself suffers from it, and a far greater degree of deeper in the spectrum than I am, and listening to her struggle, her honesty, her openness was revelatory for me. And it was very helpful for me to realize that these things can have an explanation. I'm not alone. These things aren't James problems. This isn't something I do intentionally. It's not something I have failed at. It is something about my genetics. And as I began to look at these, I also came to the realization that there's a really, 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 really good chance that my father's on the spectrum as well, because I began to realize his behaviors and his patterns and his reactions to things can be explained if he is, again, seen through the lens of the autistic spectrum. I haven't fully processed all of this. I mean, just reading the report was a bit daunting. It was like 13 pages long. It was, my wife had a very emotional response when she read the paper as well, the diagnosis as well. And I'm gonna be digesting all of this for a while. And I'm not trying to do this because I'm looking for an excuse. I did this because I want to have an understanding, have an explanation. Because there's many times in my life, sorry, there's a cat over there, and I've screwed up. And after having looked at the problem, I can figure out why that happened. But it's hard sometimes for the people I didn't tell what about that thing, especially if I hurt them and because of it. That I'm not looking for absolution. I'm not looking to excuse away what I did. But I think I figured out the explanation for why I did what I did. And that's a distinction that some people can't understand. They're not comfortable with it. For them, you're trying to explain it away, not explain it, not trying to understand it. Because sometimes I can learn from it, and sometimes it's much harder because it's one of the behaviors that I've got, because that's the way my brain is wired. And I don't have anything I can do about that. I've spent my entire life finding ways of working around the problems I've had. I've come up with 1,000 different ways of masking, from subtle to broad. And I've been doing it my whole life. And I am often confused about how people do what they do, how they interact with each other so seamlessly, so easily. And as I've joked with my friend Amy, it's like they got a manual on how to be human, and I didn't. And so I've had to kind of figure out by observation. And it's been tough. And I know that I guess if you want to look at it this way, I'm on the shallow end of the spectrum. I'm not nearly as burdened with some of the problems that some folks have. Some folks can't hold jobs. They can't have functioning relationships. They are disabled in a much worse manner than I am. But that doesn't dismiss that I'm not disabled. That doesn't dismiss that I have been finding ways of working around all these issues for more than 40 years. Observing people, copying them, figuring out what does and doesn't work. The funny thing is that Sandra commented about the fact that I have a very dark sense of humor, and I will joke about trauma in a way that she was very uncomfortable with. And during our initial intake conversation, which was done, here on a telenet connection, the actual session was done face to face. I gave her my background, including physical, emotional, psychological, and sexual abuse growing up. And she's just kind of looking at me, and I laughed, and I said, "Well, I'm sure you've heard just worse." I said, "I'm sure you've heard worse." And she paused for a second, and she looked at me and said, "Nope, that's pretty bad," which made me laugh, which made my therapist laugh, which made my friend Amy laugh. And she doesn't think I should laugh about those dark things. And I think she believes that because she herself has never had to process trauma the way some of us have, and those dark senses of humor, those dark, really morbid gallows humor, is why we're all still alive. Because we found a way to joke about something that is horrifying. Things that should never have been visited upon anyone ever in their entire lives, let alone children. But we made it. And if we want to have dark gallows humor about our survival, about our trauma, that's our right. I didn't tell Sandra that. I just took that under advisement, and I moved on with the conversation. So I'm filming this on July 29th. I got the official diagnosis yesterday on the 28th. It's like I said, still processing this. But I'm glad that I can put a name to it. I'm glad that I can say that there's a reason that this goes on. There's a reason that I process things this way, that I react this way. That it isn't just because I'm broken. There's a reason. And it's really important to me that I can put a name to it. And I can know it's not me. I didn't ask for this. I hid it, and I worked around it, and I pretended it wasn't there. And I did everything under the sun except face it. Well, I'm facing it now. I may be late in the game, but I got here. And I don't know if this is going to have, what kind of long-term effects this is going to have. What happens if I start dismantling all my masking? Who would I be? I don't know. And now I'm not 100% sure I want to. There are some things that I don't know if I'm strong enough to ever do. I'm never going to climb Mount Everest. I'm never going to lift a car. And knowing that isn't shameful. It is just the reality. Now I got a name for it. Maybe it'll give me a better grip on the situation. Maybe it'll help me in long term. But short term, it's explained a lot of things. And it's bringing me some comfort. So, for those out there who suspected, like my friend Amy did, that I was on the spectrum for quite a while, kudos on you. I'm glad you picked up on it before I did. And for any of my autistic subscribers, I know I have a number of them. I am now in your number. We are in the same cohort, though we all have different paths in that category. I don't claim to have a full understanding of this disorder. I don't know if I ever will. And I'm not claiming to be an expert, because I'm not. I can't even claim to be an expert on what I have experienced myself, because I don't think I am. But I am where I am, and I get a better understanding of who I am. And that makes me happy. So, to all the autistic folks in the world, you got one more member.